I don't know who you are, but welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast. Sit back, relax, and listen about cameras, gear, settings, stories, and all things photography. Join Darren on Ireland's Best Photography Podcast. Let's go.
You're very welcome to episode 137 of the Irish Photography Podcast. My name is Darren, I'm your host, and I'm joined by an incredibly talented photographer who I've only met recently, but I feel like that his images have blown me away from every time that I've seen them. Welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast, Bret Blakely. How are we getting on?
Good. We are getting on just fine. That's one thing I love about, Clubhouse, speaking with so many people from different places and hearing a lot of the sayings that that we've never heard. I feel like Americans have very boring sayings. So every time I hear little things, I pick it up. Tim Monaghan, obviously, I remember he wrote to me one time that he was chuffed about something. Oh, it was about me going to play with Josh Allen. He's like, "Oh, I'm chuffed for you," and I'm like, I have to use that now.
Yeah, isn't it great? Like when you think about it in Clubhouse, the amount of different people that you can meet, the amount
Oh
of
yeah.
different people from different countries, different views on things, different experience. And as you say, even Tim there, I didn't know who he was until then. And then I
Mhm.
talk to him all the time. And it's a very, very interesting thing. So I'm delighted that I got to meet you through Clubhouse. But just so in case somebody doesn't know who you are, tell us a bit about you. Who is
Yeah,
Bret?
my name's Bret Blakely, 39 years old. I'll be 40 July 29th. So
Wow.
I'm kind of freaking out. I never got, weirded out about age, but now I'm
Big
like running out
40.
of excuses. 25, I'm like, I'm only a quarter century. 27, I'm like, I'm still not in my upper 20s. It's like mid to upper.
Yeah,
You
still
keep
loads
making these
left.
little excuses. Then I'm like 40 hit, and I'm like, God damn it. This is um but I'm born and bred in Buffalo, New York, which a very easy way to figure out where that is on the map. I'm about 20 minutes from one of the natural wonders of the world, Niagara Falls. So
Beautiful.
that's a nice little area to have, and beautiful, northeastern falls. And I do landscape and wildlife, just as a pure hobby that I absolutely love. I'd love to do it full time someday, but a little busy right now. But I try and get out and shoot as much as possible. I love it.
Well, like I alluded to, your photography is incredible, and I love looking at your images. And I'm looking forward to getting stuck into as well, the stories behind a number of your images during the podcast this evening. But let me ask you really, let's go right back to the beginning. How did you get started in photography?
So landscape and wildlife is a different story. I would say though that I think I was always destined to fall in love with it. I just didn't know how much I was gonna love it
Okay.
until much later in life. But even as a kid growing up, as young as I could remember, when they, I would just get the little disposable cameras from the pharmacy and stuff like that. Every spring break, my family would take me and a couple friends to Marco Island, and I would always have a camera on me every time we hung out with friends in Buffalo. Always had a camera on me, and that was just to cherish moments, with the
Hmm.
friends. That wasn't going out and shooting flowers or
Hmm.
animals or
Hmm.
or scenes, but just always had a camera on me. Always really cherished, I think, being able to freeze a moment and be able to look back on it. So that's kind of where I think it started. And I took a little photography class in high school. You develop your own film, and that was interesting. But then it wasn't until a little over 3 years ago, I had I've always loved traveling, but when I started my golf ball company, at this point, it was 7 years ago or 10 years in now, but I couldn't afford, didn't have the time to do the international travel like I used to. So,
Hmm.
I really didn't go anywhere, for 7 years, for the most part, which shame on me. What a waste,
Hmm.
of 7 years. But, then I met Susie, who's my fiance now, and, uh, she is just as in love with traveling as I am,
Brilliant.
and she has two sisters, one of which was living in Rwanda at the time. So our first big trip was about 6 months in, to visit her sister and husband in Rwanda in
Wow.
Africa.
Wow.
And I had a little Sony, a crop sensor, Sony A6300, and I had a kit lens, and that was about it.
Hmm.
So I went there, and the mix of, the shock of just being in a place so far from home. It's a 38-hour
Wow.
travel experience with the layovers and everything, and so you're essentially a day and a half, 2 days to get
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
and then it's just pure beauty. I mean, unlike anything I'd ever seen. It's called the Land of a Thousand Rolling Hills, I believe, and it is just the most beautiful rolling green hills, lush, thing you've ever seen. And that paired with the fact that I was with Susie, and I
Hmm.
love her, both her sisters. I mean, I love her whole family. I get along really well with them, and her sisters and husbands are my age. So,
Hmm.
um, we just had such a good time, and they were our tour guides. So they took us to about 5 different areas, within a 3-hour drive
Sweet.
of Rwanda, including a safari and everything. And I I just had my camera with me at all times. And when I got back, of course, I loved the pictures that I took, but
Hmm.
right away I thought, man, I really wish I knew what I was doing. I wish I had better equipment. Wish I had more lenses, especially with the safari.
Hmm.
And that was kind of the thing that fueled it. My buddy was going to Yosemite a few months later, knew that I was just becoming interested in photography, and asked if I wanted to join him. So I spent 3 months going down the rabbit hole of YouTube, online courses, in person courses, learning every technique I could, saving up, buying a couple nice lenses, and, off to the races. Yosemite was my first ever trip that was purely for photography. And that was 3 months after that. So that was kind of the beginning of where it all happened. At that point, I was only landscape.
Wow. And you know what? It's interesting you're telling that story because I actually had something very similar when I went on my honeymoon to Borneo and I had my camera with me and I thought I was the bee's knees. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to be great. And nearly every single photograph that I took was blurred. And when I got back, I went, all right, that's it. I need to figure out how to work this thing because we came across pygmy elephants and everything else, and I couldn't even get proper photographs of them. And I was
Yep.
thinking, that's it, man. I want to get into this. So yeah, it's very, very similar actually in the same storyline. Yeah.
Well, what's funny about the blurry photos is on the first day of the Yosemite trip, you probably follow him, Adam Ardani. So he's a
Hmm.
very
I know the
talented
name. Yeah.
photographer, and he had started about 2 years earlier, so he was pretty advanced, in his journey already. And I think I had kind of overwhelmed myself with how much I tried to learn prior
Hmm.
to getting there, and so the
Hmm.
first day I had gone from auto settings to everything's manual. This is the first time though I'm going out and shooting manual myself, and not one freaking image was,
Wow.
in focus. And it was like the dumbest thing that I just didn't get. I had a peaking setting on. I didn't fully understand it. And he's not even a Sony shooter. So we get back to the room. I'm all excited. And I'm like, dude,
Ah.
every one of these is blurry. Well, what a waste of a trip. I'll just shoot everything on my goddamn iPhone. And he's laughing his ass off at me. So he takes a look at it and he figures out, he's like, bro, it was this. It was like a simple button that needed to be hit.
Wow.
And the rest of the trip was salvaged, but I thought I was going to lose my mind. I'm like, oh, just devastated.
Wow, man. Jeez, after going to Yosemite and everything with your camera. I mean, that you know what? It's your own fault for having a Sony. No, I'm only
Yeah.
joking.
What do you shoot?
I'm Canon all day long.
Okay. All right. Well,
So
that's him too.
yeah, well, you know what? I mean, Sony is a fantastic brand and have some fantastic features as well. And like you say, you just one button changes everything. And that's one thing I
Mhm,
think that, we'll get into later when I talk about the gear as well, potentially what attracts you to Sony, because it has some features I think which are perfect for your style of photography as well,
mhm.
even now. But like you mentioned there are a couple of things, and I want to go further on those, right? Um, Photography, you say you've always had a camera in your hand. Did you like to capture the moments of different things that were happening candidly, of your friends, as you say? And like throughout that, then did you try and do different styles of photography? Have you done weddings? Have you done, christenings? Have you done family photos?
Well, as a child, it was more capturing just the moments in every experience. I've always been really close to my friends. I've always been an emotionally driven, person,
Hmm.
without a
Hmm.
doubt. Relationships and everything are everything to me.
Sure.
It's sometimes that's a great way to live, and other
Hmm.
times, it would be good to be a little more logical and rational and everything. But
Yeah,
I wouldn't trade it. I think it makes me deeply empathetic and sympathetic and caring and understanding, and those are qualities that I love about myself. Everyone has things they don't like about themselves,
for
but those
sure.
are things that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, there was landscape in there. I mean, I remember at in Marco Island every year, I would pull up a seat and tell my friends, "Hey, just give me like a half hour." I'd bring one of the beach chairs into the water, and I would literally take a picture of the sun every minute as it set.
Mm.
Just boom, 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 and they're like, "Why do you need 50 pictures?" It'd be like two disposable cameras worth.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, well, the light's changing, or a bird flew through the scene, or there's a ship passing across the horizon. Um, and so it's always like, a little bit of an appreciation for small
Yes.
things. Now, as far as doing different styles, I have done it. Uh, more so as favors. Like I haven't done weddings, wedding photography. I would be terrified to do because
Me too.
that I don't know anything about your own lighting,
Hmm.
like flash. I just don't do any of that, and I would be so scared to
Hmm.
not capture somebody's most
Moment.
important day the
Yeah.
way that they hope for. But I've done a lot of stuff for like friends of mine, friends of Susie's, as far as their kids' high school portraits, or they just had a baby, things like that, which I think does help. I feel like it's good to have those experiences because every genre and style um, gets you more familiar with different things, and
Sure.
has you looking at a scene a completely different way because of the subject matter.
Hmm.
With humans and portraits and things like that, the subject matter is often a lot closer, and so it's all about filling out the back scene, the background scene, and playing with depth. Um, and then with landscape, it's oftentimes, not always, but more grandiose, where the subject is further back, and you've got to figure out something to fill in the foreground area and the middle areas to bring you to that payoff.
Hmm.
Or
Hmm. Hmm.
so I think it's good to do all that. But since I've been, I mean, as far as like, and I've done a little bit of city stuff and everything, especially when I was first learning, just like going around Buffalo and
Hmm.
doing long exposures and things like that, which I really did enjoy. But to me, there's nothing better than the landscape and the wildlife. I just like being outdoors. I like going to places and at times of the day and morning and night that most people aren't there, and feeling like I've witnessed something that a lot of people are either just don't appreciate or are too lazy to go and seek out.
Mm, they're fast asleep exactly at home, not willing to get up early in the morning to capture that moment, which is gone in an instant. And like,
Right.
as you say, the sun is in a different place or a bird flew past. I mean, light and natural light is so dynamic. I love it
Mhm.
because you could look at one scene, 2 minutes later, look at the same scene, and it's completely transformed. And 30
Mhm.
seconds later, it's gone again. And that's the thing that I love in relation to that. But I love that challenge. But one
Mhm.
challenge that I don't really have in my locker, but you do, is wildlife. And like I said, alluded to earlier on, some of your photographs you've taken of wildlife are incredible. And what is it to the wildlife photography? What do you love about it so much? What drew you to it so much?
I've always really liked animals in general, but I can truly say that my love for all animals and my respect for them is 100 times what it was before.
Mhm,
I think it becomes very addicting to feel like you've connected with another soul that is not human,
mhm,
and you do have and just like the amount of emotional and actual intelligence, but that they have, that I think there's no way that we could properly know how smart these are. Like, of course, they'll tell you elephants are the smartest and dolphins are, or are they smart, whatever. But I don't think even humans now can fully appreciate. I think, in another 50 years when there's more study, like they'll be like, they're really, they're not
mhm,
at a 2-year old level, they're at a 10-year-old level.
mhm, mhm.
Just learning patterns and seeing how, I wouldn't even say seeing how human animals are, but seeing how animal humans are.
Good
And
point.
you learn that, by watching them. They have a
Mhm,
much more linear existence.
mhm.
They have, like for humans, you have to be taught to set goals and ways to figure out how to get that, to reach and attain those goals. With animals, there's a linear path. They have to survive, and they have
Exactly.
to help their young survive, and so they know exactly what their purpose is every day. But even within that linear path, there's such a a human, again, or animal, if you want to call it, because I think, they kind of came before us, but
Hmm.
there's just a realness to their existence, with whether it's fox and you see the kits thrown up, like literally playing, tossing dead squirrels up in the air and, rolling around with each other. Or you hear about elephants and how they have actual funeral, processions
Yes.
for dead
Yeah.
ones. I mean, it gives you chills, thinking
Hmm.
about the depth of these creatures, and locking eyes with them or seeing them in their own existence. Um, it's just really fun, and I love then. There's some of the most fun. I mean, I love post processing in general. It's probably my weakest suit, but I love I love doing it with animals because I feel like it's an opportunity to put them in a light that, just makes them as beautiful as they should be
Hmm.
seen,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
gives them the proper respect they deserve. Like, sometimes their surroundings, or maybe it's, beginning of spring when everything's muddy and all that. Like, I don't even want to take away from um, the awe of their existence by not putting everything into creating an aesthetic that I feel matches what it is to share a moment with that creature.
Absolutely. And just to think about that a bit further there, right? When you're watching, let's say a fox, okay, and you
Mhm.
want to take a photograph of a fox, you're seeing the family of fox. They're probably close to the den, and we'll get to later on, I suppose, to the style of that. But you're observing things that people walk by or don't even see because
Mhm.
they're too busy with their own lives. And a human is a very interesting creature because we have, okay, opposable thumbs is the first thing, but also we can think. And the thought process that we use every day is what drives us. And it's so diverse as an individual, it can go one direction or another direction. Just
Mhm.
like a family unit, as an example, where you all come from the same family, but there's a cohesiveness there, but you're all individuals because everybody is an individual person with a different purpose in life. So when you're talking about the wild animal and to be there in the company of them, to have that emotional connection with them, but to be able to photograph that and then process that image to relay what you felt and what the scene was, that in itself I think is incredible. I mean, even the way you described it to me, it just is a wow.
Yeah, it's definitely taken on a different meaning, because you literally have no control over the situation. Like, weather's the big variable with landscape photography.
Hmm.
Um, and getting to that scene at the right time of day, that's how you put yourself in position for success,
Hmm.
scouting the weather,
Hmm.
knowing where to go, figuring out the right composition, and getting up early enough or going late enough, or whatever your end goal is. With wildlife, uh, it's that and a billion different things. You have to find out where there's even, whatever creature you're trying to find, where they're living, where the den
Hmm.
is,
Hmm.
then figuring out the routines. I mean, the fox I actually have not posted any of them from that whole, like, couple, that month where I was going every morning. I've got a
Yeah.
bunch of shots, but I just could never get close enough that I was happy with. Like, yeah, I'm gonna keep those shots, but uh, it just wasn't. I didn't feel like it was gonna pay them the respect that they
Hmm.
deserve,
Hmm. Hmm.
but I still loved it, and I learned throughout over those 3, 4 weeks. I mean, I learned their exact pattern of behavior. I knew that between 8 and 8:30 every single day, the mom was gonna come out of the den, scurry across the ice, and head to the woods to go hunt.
Wow.
Like, that was a guarantee, and I kept setting myself up in different positions. It was just the location and the time that they would come out that made it super hard to get anything that was, as detailed. I mean, I have standards, for myself too,
Sure.
and they're great photos, but I was out with Arthur LaFoe and Brooke Little Bear, and I know it's different because they pull up on the side of a road. I mean, they've told me. I'm like, how did you get that fox? You can see its freaking soul. Like, you can see,
Hmm.
the hair fibers. You can see where the hair goes in, the
Hmm.
follicles and everything. And they're like, oh, dude, we were like 3 feet away. And that's not realistic for where I live.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's out
Yeah.
west. That's
Yeah.
where you can get that kind of stuff. Um, but that's the kind of, standard I want to set if I'm gonna capture a creature like that. I want to be able to make sure that
You do it
people are
justice.
seeing every detail and appreciating the nooks and crannies, the fur, the eyes, the glare, the whiskers, everything.
Yeah, and that reminds me of an image that you did, which was the swan. And
Yeah.
we were talking actually on Clubhouse on the evening before it or after it, or you mentioned in relation to an
Hmm.
image of the swan, and then you processed the image of the swan, and I looked and going, wow, you can see the water droplets that are coming down from the
Yeah.
beak. You can see the sheen of the water that's still on the feathers. You can
Hmm.
see the shape of the face, the eyes, the beak, everything. It's just a beautiful photograph. So yeah,
Ah, thank you.
I get you. I get what you mean there in relation to, wanting to portray it as good as nature actually has made it, but we have to capture
Yeah.
it through the photograph, or you have to capture it through the photograph because I can't take wildlife photos. But yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and tell me, have you a favorite wildlife photograph to date?
Oh man, I think I think the I've got it in my bedroom. It's from last spring, and it was the first fox, experience I ever had. It was I drove 6 hours to meet up with Aaron Mantis Photography,
Okay,
who's incredible, because he had the beat on, four kits in the mom. Uh, that was like a guarantee. It had been showing up every day, and me and Adam and Nooch had been trying for weeks. Got blinds. We're in full camo, 5 a.m. every morning. Nothing. So on Aaron on Friday was like, dude, you should really come up this weekend. Like they are coming out every day. It'll be fun to chill anyway. We'll have some beers whether we see him or not. I'm like, all right, tomorrow morning, if I don't, I'm going out tomorrow morning. I'm like, if I don't see the fox,
hmm
I'm going right there. And sure enough, hear it. You can hear the screech, everything, but nothing. And so right then and there, it's like 8 a.m. by the time I left there after a few hours. And uh, I'm like, Aaron, I'm coming. I'm gonna grab some food and I'm coming. I got there at sunset, and within 10 minutes, all four kids
oh
were
wow,
out playing,
wow,
and I was just like, oh my god. And so I've got a ton from there that I loved, but I think my favorite one is uh, it's just a kit. It was actually looking up at a bee that was out of frame, and
class.
so it's
I know,
just like a
I know the
side shot
image.
of it,
I
and
know the
it's
image. Yeah.
looking up, and so I add a little bit more light coming in, and it just to me it felt like the epitome of a kid's curiosity, of a
hmm
child's curiosity of
hmm
life, and just like a wonderment. I felt like this kid was just so enamored and entranced by a bee, and you couldn't see the bee, so I made it just kind of this glow of light, just kind of
hmm
like all the wonderment of being alive and young, and
Wow,
everything at your fingertips. And so I have that. I got it. A huge print of it, like 24 by 30, not huge, but 24 by 30 or
that's
something for our
big. Yeah,
bedroom,
that's big.
a metal print. And it's just one of my favorites ever.
I know the shot. It's a phenomenal shot. I'll actually share the shot on the show notes so people can see what the shot is because
Oh,
it's
it's awesome. Thanks.
yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah, if it's the one that's on Instagram, I think it is because I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've got a bunch from that, like from that time. I probably
Mhm.
posted about five of them, but
Yeah.
I think it was my first one that I posted, and yeah, it was last spring. So you'd have to go back a little bit, but yeah, it's great.
I'll find it, and if I don't find it, I'm sure people will look for it because it's even you describing it there again. I can see, the raw what's the word, innocence that's
Mhm.
there from the cub looking up, seeing the
Mhm.
bee. And then as you say, you add the light, and then it's all of a sudden it's like a glow that's coming into the beautiful animal, and the detail
Yeah.
is there. And I think that's it's a phenomenal shot. So no,
Well,
bravo,
it's
great.
funny. I've got a Shiba Inu too, and if anyone knows what a Shiba Inu for
I
dogs
don't.
is, or they when you look up what to expect, like with the breed and everything, they said expect every single person to tell you, "Oh, it looks like a fox." So that
Okay.
fox and my dog look identical. Um,
Wow.
they're actually considered the national treasure in Japan. They're old Japanese mountain dogs that were used for hunting. They're not big. I mean, they're only 20 to 25 on average. Sometimes
Okay.
you get bigger ones, but um, they're a lot of personality. They do look just like a fox. Mine
Wow.
is like same coloring. So I think it also meant a lot to me because I'm like, I felt like I was looking at my dog, and especially the way the kids were playing. I
Hmm.
mean, it was like watching him in the backyard playing with the bees, trying to bite him, trying to nip him. Like it was the exact
Mad.
same thing. I'm like, you are Leo, you're my dog.
Mad, mad. And like even there, you're mentioning a couple of things, and it brings me to something I wanted to ask you, right? And it's a quote that I found on your bio. And I'll read your own quote to you, right? But maybe I can
Okay.
just get a bit your own idea of, what the thoughts about these words are. So it's, I love the way photography pushes me to explore the world and then capture moments that made me feel something. I hope to evoke an emotion with my photos because to feel something is to be alive. Tell me a
Mm.
bit more about that. That's fantastic words, but where did that sentiment come from?
Um, I mean, kind of going back to earlier, like just that is how I've been wired. I, I, I don't know. We all have insecurities, and I have insecurities, and I think, for me growing up, well, my big one was I was born with no left ear, so I had to have about 6 surgeries to
Oh,
get a recreated one. So now it
okay.
kind of looks my left one kind of looks like a wrestler's ear.
Okay, yeah.
Um, but as a kid, when you're 5, 6 years old, you know you don't understand that people don't care about that. They care about who you
Yeah.
are as a person.
Yeah.
And it made me develop, I think, had a big influence on the personality. I was very outgoing, from early on. I was always, um, I think, fun and funny and everything. And
Mm,
I didn't have a tough time. I wasn't picked on growing up or anything. I think I can like recall 3 times it happened in my child. I was lucky for that, but I
yeah.
think it's because from a very early age, I felt like whether it was subconscious or conscious, I developed a personality that I felt people, um, there's no way they wouldn't like me, and that if that was going to be an issue to them, then like basically it was my buffer. It was
Mhm.
a way for me to protect against
Yeah,
not
for
being
sure.
liked and everything. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I think that's a big reason why then I always really did appreciate anyone in my life, whether it was friends or girlfriends,
Mhm.
that, didn't give it a second thought because to me it was something I thought about every second of every day,
For sure. Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I sat, the angles when I first met somebody, like it took me 25 years to truly
Wow.
get over. A lot of it helped with when I started my own company,
Mhm.
going
Mhm.
on CNBC or local television or whatever, and being interviewed where you didn't have a choice where the camera was pointing, and
Mhm.
just having to get over that.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's, I would never change it. It's done worlds for me. I feel like, but I think that's where a lot of those words come by because it's influenced me wanting to um, have something that means something to something else because for me that is what's most important, like having that emotional visceral reaction to
Mhm.
anything uh, is what happens to me when I take a picture of something. If you see it on my Instagram or my website, it's because that moment meant
Means
something.
something. Yeah.
And so that's why I share it because I really want to have that same kind of effect. To other people. It's just so boring to go through life unaffected or not allow yourself to I guess tap into your emotions. I always told people, in my opinion, that vulnerability is the strongest characteristic a person can have.
Mhm.
A willingness to be vulnerable, I should say.
Mhm.
The idea of like you shouldn't show your emotions, you're a guy, that's what being a man is. To me, I think that's the opposite.
Yeah.
If you're able to share and be open, and I think that's a really strong characteristic. It shows confidence in yourself, and it should show the people around you that you're sharing with that you mean a lot to them because they've
Mm.
gained that trust.
Absolutely. And like, if you can show some place through a photograph that you have a feeling, and if you can have that feeling come through the photograph, that somebody else can go, wow, that's incredible. And as you say, like it's something good to feel alive, to feel part of this
Hmm.
world that we live in. And through photography, I think that's a very interesting view because we can do that. But how somebody can relate to an image, which is something that fascinates me. They can relate to an image I've taken more than I relate to that image, even
Mm,
though I was there, because that image can bring something from the past, or it can hit something in a dream, or it can hit something in the vision of a future, but it's an emotional connection that
hmm
they hold on to, another emotion before, now, or in the future, but they attach it to that image. And when you say about, true photography, to be able to bring somebody to a place, or to experience almost the feeling that you had, then it is, of course, great to be alive. So yeah, I mean, it's
And don't
good.
you think the one thing that, almost every photographer would probably agree on is that photographers do see the world in a way where they appreciate and notice things that many other people don't. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Their creativity, the things that they find beauty in, might just be something different. It could be they
Hmm.
hear it,
Hmm.
it could be they
Hmm.
smell it, whatever.
Hmm.
But I think that's part of what sharing your photography is all about too. Is I love the fact that something really small gets me so excited. Whether it's just like
Hmm.
light hitting something, or I think that is such a gift to be able to take such enjoyment, um, especially in a time like quarantine, like where you could be stuck in somewhere 24/7, but you look outside and you see sun rays coming through the clouds, and you're just like, that just revitalized me for the day. Like that's a really a gift, and I think that's part of what sharing your photography is all about. You want so badly for other people to understand why you get excited about something so small that they might overlook every day. It's like you're almost trying to be like, look, like shake them, wake
Hmm.
up. Like you can
Hmm.
have a ton of enjoyment by just opening your eyes and noticing it and
Yeah.
appreciating it.
And just get outdoors, and go
Hmm
outside and experience it. And actually, speaking of going outdoors, you've mentioned it a couple of times here, from golf, and your golf business. So tell us a bit about your golf and golf balls. What's the story there? How did that start?
Yeah. So I was living in New York at the time. I just gone there for I lived there for 3 years, a couple years after college, because I wanted to do marketing and advertising. And at that time, there really wasn't much in Buffalo going on at that time. Buffalo, since 2012, has undergone a huge resurgence, and I mean, it's just an awesome city to live in, tons
Brilliant.
of marketing agents, things like that. But that time I was like, I always wanted to go to New York for at least a little bit. So I was delivering pizzas, and I sold my car and booked a flight out. Didn't have a job lined up or anything, and but found a place and got it, and was training Wall Street guys at the gym from
Mm.
5 a.m. to like 1 p.m. and then doing a temp agency job, for the other time. And
Mhm.
ended up getting some jobs doing international marketing and advertising, and met some folks there. And one of my buddies, Steve, was a golfer on the NYU golf team. Um,
Okay.
so I was a marketer and always played every sport in the world. And he was in finance, but he was interested in golf. And uh, there's an engineer that had worked for my father's advanced materials company that just invented everything. And he had this crazy golf ball with a hollow core. And
Okay.
so fast forward till the third year of me living there, it's when it was December 8th, 2008, when I lost my job. He lost his job on Deutsche Bank. The same day was when the job market tanked in the
Thanks.
United States.
Yeah.
I mean, our whole company went under within 2 days. It was crazy.
Wow.
And so it just kind of started off as, how are we going to find work? How are we going to afford to live? And maybe we could market this crazy golf ball invention with my marketing background, his golf, and um, essentially just spent the next 6 months going to small business association and
Brilliant.
learning how to start a company, how to write bylaws, all that stuff. And after that time, we pitched the engineer about trying to commercialize his product, and he was ecstatic that one of his inventions was going to possibly see the light of day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it was about 2 years till after that that we started the company, and now since then we've been sold in 28 countries. We've got
Wow.
professional athletes as investors, and golf. Our one of our tour players last week finished 20th in the Schwab Challenge. We've got
Wow.
award-winning golf balls. It's been a really fun and rewarding journey. And what's nice is that, I mean, golf courses are usually in very nice places. So even my work trips, I'll book a few days earlier to go take photos. So I could really, I'm lucky to have a job that, allows me to get to places that kind of feed my other passion. It's life's
For
all about
sure.
balance and everything. And to be able to do that is great. Like this last trip to California, I went to Death Valley for, 2.5 days, which
Hmm.
I'd never been to. And
Hmm.
let me tell you, shooting the sand dunes was one of the most amazing uh, experiences and landscapes I've ever seen. I have probably 200 photos from there that I would post in an instant. It's
Wow.
all I can do to not make my entire Instagram feed a dune because it was just so mesmerizing of a landscape. It was cool.
Yeah, you know what? It's a place I'd love to go to, and even just following on your stories and photos and such like that, it's just been incredible. Because the main thing I think from my side looking at that is we don't have deserts in Ireland, right? We don't have deserts, we don't have rainforests. We got pretty much everything else. We don't have deserts or rainforests.
Hmm.
And when I look at that and I see the light hitting the top of those, and I see the wind hitting the sand, and all of a sudden it's changing so dynamic every day. The ground is changing every day. It's never going to be the same the day after. And that's
Hmm.
I remember following that and going, "Wow." And I was thinking to myself, "Jesus, you have to go into a pretty big sand bunker there on this round of golf." That's what I first thought when I saw
Yeah.
it.
I'd still be trying to get out of it if that was a golf course.
Yeah,
It's funny though,
phenomenal.
because Ireland is such a landscape that, it's moody. You talked about, we were chatting earlier, and you're like, when are you coming, for the high winds and crazy
Mhm,
sea swells? And like, to me, that's my happy place. That's why I want to get out there so badly to photograph that landscape. And like I said, the picture you have behind you, like I would
mhm,
be a kid in a candy store. And I didn't go to the dunes until my, uh, like halfway through my sand dune or Death Valley trip,
mhm,
because there were other spots I wanted to hit, and I'm glad
sure.
I didn't because I didn't know that having a place that was pretty much monotone with brown sand, it's
Mhm,
not like you have a variety of colors. I had no idea how many photo opportunities, how many different types of photos you could take there. And I went for the sunrise and I'm like, screw this, I'm coming back tonight. And then I had one more sunrise. I'm like, I'm going back there. Like I skipped out on other things. I'm like,
Wow,
man, if I'd gone there first, I probably would have only
never
shot
left.
sand dunes because it
Yeah.
was just endless opportunities.
Wow. Wow. Incredible. Incredible. All right. Listen, I've really enjoyed the first segment there to give us a good insight and a good foothold into your photography. What we're going to do is we're going to take a very quick break and we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this episode of the Irish Photography Podcast, why not jump back and listen to the back catalogue we have of episodes, where you'll get some great insights from fantastic guests, gear reviews, lots of hints and tips, and above all else, keeping you company while you drive or relax. Thanks very much for listening. Please consider subscribing, leaving a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Irish Photography Podcast. So, Bret, now I want to move on to some of your photographs, right? I want you to kind of tell me a bit more in relation to some of the stories that go on behind them. So, we spoke about foxes, and I think from a fox point of view, that's been phenomenal, right? Um, but I didn't really know you from your wildlife photography when I first started talking to you, because I first started talking to you on Clubhouse, and you were this guy that was going, guys, 2 weeks going to the Tetons. Guys, 10 days, I'm going to the Tetons. Guys,
Oh man,
7 days, I'm going to the Tetons. And I was
is that
like,
what I was like? Damn it.
and I'm like, what are the Tetons? I had no idea because,
Yeah.
I'm in Ireland. We don't know in relation to that. But then it was the countdown. It was like the 5 days, the 4, the 3, the 2, the 1. I went, okay, he's gone. I can't wait to see what this is. And then I started to see some of the images coming through. Now, you have done, I think, a phenomenal body of work in that trip. And I think, I saw a couple of videos as well that you've made as well when you were going through on that trip and such like that. Tell me a bit more about that trip and tell me a bit more about the photos that you captured.
Uh, it was magical for a lot of reasons. For one, it was the first time I had hopped on a plane since COVID.
Hmm.
So that was great. It was a bucket list trip, a place that I had been dying to get to. Um, and I love winter. I love all the seasons, but
Hmm.
uh, I'm going to go back to the Tetons, I think, in fall because I do want to get the bears and stuff
Nice.
like that. But I wanted somewhere that was the definition of winter, and vastness. And I mean, I was watching videos about the winter season there every day, and it's the most iconic mountain range in the United States. I mean, it's
Okay.
just a bunch of shark fins, that
Hmm.
are incredible. Um, and after being cooped up for a year, where don't get me wrong, the Northeast is great, but we don't have mountains. We have hills. We
Hmm.
have small mountains.
Hmm.
I was fiending for something epic and
Hmm.
big and
Hmm.
larger than life, and so it was just great. I went there, and two photographers that I had only known through Instagram, Arthur LaFoe and Hayden Sinkades. They were the best hosts you could ask for. They got up every single morning, called off days of work, and shot with me from literally 4:30 a.m. to get start driving. Sometimes there's an hour and a half drive to get where we want to. Sometimes
Wow.
it's a half hour until nighttime. Went to dinner with me. We had beers together. Like, it was just an incredible trip. But I had also never seen a moose in person. I had never
Hmm.
seen bison in person, which, I mean, a bison, a buffalo, obviously that's our sports logo. So like, I had
Hmm.
been dying to get a shot at that. Uh, there were so many things. The alpenglow, I had never captured alpenglow.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just, every moment of it was perfect because everything was so new. And there was a day that it was minus 20, I think.
Nice.
And it sucked. I mean, it sucked because your fingers, even in, I had real deal gloves, that were
Yes.
meant for that kind of temperature. And they were in excruciating pain.
Wow.
uh, I had to take them out of the finger parts and ball your fist
Hmm.
inside, because it was the only thing that was gonna kind of keep them warmer.
Wow.
And I'm just like, man, but that's part of the story.
Yeah.
And seeing this range was crazy. And one of the things that was insane was the fact that the Arthur had said that he hadn't seen the tops of the Tetons in a month and a half. That it
Wow.
had been snowing. They had already had over 40 feet of snow there. So I was kind of worried that I was actually never going to get to see the tops. And
Hmm.
I thought that what I was seeing of it, I was like, that's got to be like half the height.
Hmm.
When I finally saw them on the third day, fully exposed, I realized that what I'd been seeing the first 2 days was about a tenth of them. And I was
Wow.
like, I actually, no joke, I am an emotional guy, but I, I did, like, I was choked up. I had tears in
Yeah.
my eyes. I looked at my buddy, and the first time it came out, the sun shined, all the clouds had been removed, and I come around to spend. I'd just been shooting some elk, and I had some music on, and I was just, I was floored, utterly floored.
Mm. You know what? It's moments like that again, as you say. It's the experience. It's being with those people to be able to bring you there, but also
Hmm.
you might have thought I'm sharing it with people, but also you're remembering it for who you are yourself. And then you had the camera, which is what I love about photography, because you've got the camera there to
Yeah,
capture that moment that you can relive that again at a later stage over and
yeah.
over and over again. And
Well,
of that trip, yeah, go on, yeah.
I was just gonna say, the night that you were on Clubhouse, how excited you were.
Yeah,
It's funny because I can relate to that so much, because that is how I get about everything. When I go on a photo trip, it's like every day, every morning.
brilliant.
And the two guys I was with, and actually a couple more of their buddies were with us. I mean, they they just kept telling me, they're like, I have never had more fun showing somebody the Tetons. Like, you make me appreciate, because of how excited I
Yeah,
got.
yeah,
They were just like, this is, I could take you out every day because you're just so freaking happy, and it
yeah,
made them happy. Made
yeah,
them proud to call that place their home and
yeah.
show it. So sorry to interrupt, but you
No, no,
reminded me it very
yeah,
much so.
yeah, but you know what? You're dead right. And I think, like, like I say, we go there because we enjoy things. And
Mhm.
even if I have a philosophy is that there's no such thing as bad conditions in landscape photography. There's
Right.
always a shot. It may not be a banger shot, but there's always a shot. If you go look for that
Mhm.
shot, you'll find that shot. But you were there to see the Tetons. You thought, I'm never going to see it. Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it breaks with light. And like, as you say, you come around the corner, you got the music. It's like, this is like something out of a movie, and you're
Yeah.
just coming around. And that's the kind of thing that I love hearing about stories like that. And what I
Hmm.
was going to ask you was, have you a favorite? I know it's a hard one, and I'm going to ask you a few hard questions next, I suppose, in the different trips. But have you a favorite photograph from that trip?
Um, whew, that's tough. It's either the bison, the two
Hmm.
bison, running through the snow,
Yes,
because
beautiful
it
shot.
was the last shot that I got. The whole week I hadn't seen them, and they couldn't
Okay.
believe it because they're like, normally we see them on the side of the road all the time,
Hmm.
and we actually had to. Uh, we drove around for like 2 hours, and uh, we saw them far off in the distance. So we found a place to pull over, put on our snowshoes, hiked through this whole forest, and came out to a clearing where there was like 100 of them.
Mm.
And I mean, when I say knee deep, it's more like waist deep. Even with snowshoes, you're sinking up over your knee. It's
Oh,
exhausting to
yeah.
walk through there. And I was still really far from them, but got close enough. And they're all just kind of grazing out in this way. And then all of a sudden, they just start booking and charging, not towards us, but to the right.
Yeah.
And that was the video I posted
Hmm.
where you see me look back and Arthur's taping me with the phone. I didn't even know. And I'm like, this is insane. And he's like, yeah, buddy. Like he was just so geeked out for me. Like he didn't even need to capture because he sees it all the time. And I've
Yeah.
got these charging bison.
Wow.
So that might be it. The other one is from that morning. I got a couple shots from there. There's that wide one with the alpenglow. It's just a beautiful landscape
Beautiful
of the
shot.
Tetons. But the one that I think it was my first shot that I posted from there was there was a it's a place called Togwoody Pass, and it's just a great view, really up and down, drive the road and
Hmm.
everything, but a great view of the Tetons in the distance. And a snowplow was coming toward us, and Arthur and Hayden, they they saw that and they got off. Then they stopped shooting because they were thinking, oh, I don't really want a car in my shot. And
Hmm.
I was like, man, it's a snowplow. You can't even see the car. All you can see are lights. And I
Hmm.
got this awesome shot. It's like, it's a classic location. But Arthur was like, dude, I don't think I've ever seen a shot from that spot like that, because everybody always just, it's a blank road and everything. And you just see these two beams
Hmm.
in this cloud of mist at the
Hmm.
bottom left, and then the alpenglow on the Tetons in the background. Um, definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's great when everything comes together for a moment that's not going to be there, that nobody else would see, because they go, as you say, like, move out of the way here. But no, hang on a second, there's
Yeah.
something. And that's about having the balls to have your own image and say, this is what I want to get, as opposed to just going for the cliche. Everybody goes to one spot because it looks nice, yes, but when you can add something into your shot,
Hmm.
it makes it your own. And, like, speaking of where everybody can go and take a shot, I mean, you've alluded to earlier on, the first trip that you went to was Yosemite. I presume you've gone back to Yosemite again since, have you?
Yeah. Yeah. I
How many
went
times?
one other time.
One other time. Okay.
I will be back there again, but it's just like, man, there's so many places and only so much time.
Mm.
But yeah, I could go there a million times. It really is a photographer's dream.
I've never been to Yosemite, but it is a place that I know that I would love, and
Hmm.
I've watched a few videos from people over the years and such like that, and you can just see the amount of atmosphere that can come through the areas that are there. Okay, you've got in February when you get the ray light that comes in and hits the water, and you get the golden, that looks like
Hmm.
lava. Wow, that's incredible. But I'm thinking then, from your point of view, wildlife, because when you were there, first of all, you were kind of learning in relation to, I'm getting my camera, and of course, as you say, the images weren't stellar. Let's put it that way,
Hmm.
right? But if you were to go back to Yosemite now, with what you know and what you've learned, would there be one particular type of wildlife photograph that you'd like to get in Yosemite?
Um, I say this with some fear in my voice. A bear. I mean, a bear is just on my list in general.
Hmm.
But mountain lions are up there too,
Hmm.
which are cool. To be honest, so any of those, the lynx, the mountain lion, the fox, the coyote, I saw a couple of those while I was there, and um, it's just such a iconic place, and I wish I had been into wildlife photography when I went out there to do some more of that exploring. But one
Mm.
thing I love about the place in general is just the variance in landscape opportunities that there are. I mean, you take an hour drive and you're up to Mariposa Grove, which are the 250-foot tall redwoods.
Yes.
All the waterfalls, the valley shots, the wood scenes, like you can get a little bit of everything, there, and obviously the mountains themselves. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just it's a playground, you know.
And you mentioned something there, which is a lot of in Yosemite, and I see a lot of it as well when I look through your portfolio of images, is waterfalls. And
Mhm.
waterfalls, I think, are something that I love to take photographs of, but I don't have waterfalls like you guys have waterfalls in the US, right? I mean, but we have waterfalls that are intimate waterfalls as opposed to your big, grand, giant waterfall. So, what is it about waterfalls that attracts you?
I just I think early on, the first time I ever did a long exposure shot, waterfall is like the thing that you do it with,
Yeah.
and it was just it's attached to that first feeling of awe of what you could do with a camera by shooting on manual, and maybe
Hmm.
and having a little bit of gear, a little bit of technical skill,
Getcha.
to do
Yeah.
something. You're like, man, you can literally manipulate time. You're manipulating time.
Right.
You're capturing this whole motion, and the fact that it looks different at point 0.5 seconds to 1.3 to 10 to 20. um, I just think there's something about the beauty of a waterfall that, even when you capture the raw power of them, those
Hmm.
are incredible shots. I like, especially in Iceland, some of those
Hmm.
are so heavy flowing, and when you just freeze it,
Hmm.
it's just a lot of opportunities there, and there's just something elegant about them.
Do you find that when you're at a waterfall, that number one, you've got the sound, okay? So I mean, the sound, it can be deafening, but it brings that extra dimension, let's just say, into being there. But
Hmm.
when you take a photograph of a big, big waterfall and you look at the image afterwards, do you find that you can almost bring yourself back to the point where you can hear the sound that was there at the time and remember
Sure.
the whole ferocity of the flowing of the water?
Yeah, I feel like every time I've shot a waterfall, there's a story with it
Hmm.
that's memorable. And it's usually because, to get something dynamic, you're wearing muck boots or whatever, and
Hmm.
you're wading into water that's just rushing past you, trying to blow you in, and you're like, oh, this is a little sketchy or whatever, or you're
Yeah.
you're set up on a weird rock or log where, man, if your camera falls over, it's going to get washed away. Like there's
Gone.
always an extra element, whether you want to call it danger or just danger for your gear, whatever the case may be. I
Hmm.
feel like there's usually a story, and there's usually, it's not like waterfalls are often. Sometimes they are. Multnomah Falls in Oregon is on the side of the road, essentially,
Wow.
but for the most part, you're having a bit of an adventure to get
Yeah.
to see that waterfall.
Yeah.
It's usually not just presenting itself for you. You usually don't get rewarded without a little bit of hard work to get to it.
You know what? It does not make it all the better, because you've put in the hard work. You've gone in to find that image. You've put in
Hmm.
your own trekking, your own exploring, your own mapping to be able to find something. And all of a sudden you go, I never saw this before. Why? Because it's not on the side of the road, as you say. So there's a
Right.
reward there to get there. It's just a side note, I suppose. A couple of weeks back, I went on a trip around West Cork, and I was driving along the road. It was raining, and I was looking, and I see these very, very high mountains, not very high mountains, but mountains for Ireland, like hills, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I see the water coming down. I'm like, Jesus, that looks like a big waterfall, right? So I said, okay, I wonder, can I get in there? And I found a little area, and I went, okay, on the map, and it was an old little kind of a country road, a boreen. So I drove down the road, and all of a sudden, I got to the end of the road, and I'm stopped because there was a farmer who was going through the road with his sheep, right? So I had to wait for him and so forth. Turns out that I wasn't on any boreen, I was on his own private road. So I just went, "Oh shit, okay, what do I do here?" So I just said hello to him and I asked him, I said, "Is there any way I can get up to this waterfall?" And he said, "No, no, not really." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, because it's private land, you can't go over there." And I went, "All right." So he says, "What you want to go over there for?" I said, "Well, I'd love to go over and take some photographs." And I was telling him a bit of things that I would do. And of course,
Hmm.
the conversation then, beauty of conversation and talking to people is that, the conversation opens. And he went, look, go down there. He says, park down here. You can go over through the second gate, go through this field, they'll take your way up and you'll find the waterfall. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Jesus, wow. But it turns out that it's the highest waterfall in Ireland and England. It's 1,150 feet high of a waterfall. And there's a
Wow.
there's a lake up at the top of it as well, which is what feeds the waterfall. But
Yeah.
the day I was there was no flow. So it was a very, very, very small flow coming down the waterfall. But I would love to go there when it's a big, big flow to be able to see
Mhm.
that expanse of water. But what I love about a waterfall, as you say, there's a story behind it, but also every image is going to be different because water in its very nature moves in fluidity and there's nothing static about it. So it's what I love about going to the sea is every photograph I take, every wave is going to be different. And the
Mm.
same thing with waterfalls, because I go to this waterfall hoping that I'm going to have a huge flow of water that's going to be, wow, look at this. I only have a trickle in reality of water, but I still concentrated on the water. And I
Yep.
got some beautiful images then of little micro vignettes of a huge giant waterfall that had no
Mhm.
water. And that's what I'm thinking, when you say about what the waterfall aspect of it, because for me, that's incredible that you can capture something that isn't actually even there because the water is moving. But when you do a long exposure, you're capturing that water. And that's what I love about waterfalls for me. And I think it's pretty similar from your point of view, I think, from that flow of the water.
Yep. Yeah, what you captured is already a forgotten moment, to the waterfall. It's already on a different part of its journey. Nobody will ever capture that exact water
Yeah,
again.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Next style of photography I want to talk about, and it's one that I've seen a lot of fantastic photographs. And I thought you were going to mention it actually when we were talking earlier about favorite photos, because it's one of my favorite photos of yours. It's of a bird. It's of an eagle that's sitting in a tree that you have a fantastic photograph of. But I noticed, like, to take photographs of birds, that is something that's not easy. I've tried even in my own back garden to try and take photographs of birds, and yeah, I get them, but it's not a beautiful image. Let's just say. So there's a certain skills that you have to be a wildlife photographer, but there's also another certain set of skills that you have to be a bird photographer.
Mm.
So you mentioned earlier about your approach to the foxes and such like that. What's your approach to the bird photography? Are you a stalker or are you more of an opportunist?
Um, I've been more of an opportunist so far, just because the opportunity or I guess the times that I've shot, like the last one that one that I have diving down,
Hmm.
that I
Hmm.
posted recently was from my trip to California, and I was just looking up like what's around here to shoot, and I saw that there was a ecological reserve that had a bunch of birds,
Okay.
um, and those things are fast. I mean, I literally look like this.
Yeah.
Nobody can see that; they're just hearing me. But just imagine somebody shit-faced drunk
Yeah, with a
with
lens.
a 10 pound holding something 10 pounds that sticks out 2.5 feet,
Yeah.
trying to control that thing. Um, but my as far as how I shoot them is changed every time, especially with that was the most difficult shot experience I've ever had because of the speed and because of the maneuvers it would make.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And it was so hard to predict. I mean, you knew that they were hovering over and searching for something to dive bomb,
Hmm.
um,
But you
but you
didn't
didn't
know
know
where.
when. Oftentimes they would like do this roller coaster loop, go down, and then pull up at the last second because the fish was gone or whatever. And you're like, damn
Hmm.
it. So the whole technique there was to lock onto it from a while away, from a ways away, and literally just try and track it, which is why you're making all these ridiculous movements because you're never going to be able to hold still and know that, hey, he's probably going to, like, you can't just say he's probably going to dive within the next 40 feet in front of
Yeah.
me and then
Yeah.
focus on that whole area,
Yeah.
because they could be all over the place. So, with bird photography, I'm very much still learning. Well, with wildlife in general, I'm always learning. Everyone's
Of
always
course.
learning. But
Yeah.
my goal this year is to try and get a lot more, I guess we'll call it like moving in existence hunting type of wildlife photography. I've gotten a ton of really great portrait style wildlife, and that eagle is, I love that one. That was from my
Beautiful.
first morning in the Tetons too.
Beautiful.
But I mean, wasn't difficult per se because It's
You sit there in
sitting
a
in the
tree.
tree.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but flying, like I was trying for 2 hours in California to get that thing coming up with a fish. The closest I got was getting its wings kind of, its head is in the water, its wings are still out of the water as it dove in,
Mm-hmm.
and water frozen in like the shape of a crown behind it and everything, which is cool. But
Mm-hmm.
I was never able to get it coming up out of the water with fish.
Fish.
And I did realize though that so part of my problem is I love my 150 to 600. It's been great, but it's really more for portraiture
Okay.
because I need a native lens. Like I have an adapter for that,
Mm-hmm.
and it just there's a hitch. It does not track something at that speed. It's
As quick as
gonna
it should do. Yeah.
malfunction. You know what I mean? It's too slow.
Yeah.
You really do need a native lens to be able uh, to track it. So I used my 70 to 200 for that shot, and it did a great job of tracking it. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
like night and day from anything I had ever tried before. I wasn't understanding how my buddy Mike was always getting these crystal clear bird shots,
Yeah.
and I'm like, dude, how you have that huge lens? He's like,
Yeah.
well, it's native to my camera. And I'm like, is it really that big of it? Like, because I had nothing to, compare it to. And he's like, oh yeah, you're losing like a half second on that thing. He's like, you're never gonna get, a bird in flight really
Yeah.
sharp
And is it a
without
s-
a native lens.
is it a Sigma 150 to 600 you have? And
Yep.
is it
And
MC21 adapter?
MC11 adapter.
MC11.
I got a Sony A7R3, so it's a full frame MC11 adapter. Now the 7200G Master is native, and that worked great, but it's
Yeah.
it only goes to 200.
Yeah. It's the
So
extra bit of the adapter and that extra processing which is the catcher.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I would love to get either the 1 to 400 or eventually a 600 Prime, but I mean you're talking money, you
Yeah,
know,
lots and lots of
buy 11
money.
grand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Sony lenses aren't cheap either, but they are great. The G Master lenses are incredible. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't shoot Sony, but even I'm okay to admit that the G Master lenses are incredible because
yeah,
they need to be incredible to keep up with the Canon lenses.
yep, yeah, exactly. There you go. I'll let you take those jabs.
And you know what? I suppose one final thing I suppose I want to talk to you from the different types of photography and wildlife is something that they fascinate me. I think they fascinate a lot of people around the world, and anybody that likes a dog will, I think, have an akin feeling towards a wolf. And I've never seen a wolf in real life. Um, Never mind, say, photograph a wolf, but you have. So, like, tell me a bit more about photographing wolves. Has this been something that you've wanted to do for a while, or how was the experience? Just tell me more about it, because I haven't done it. I'd love
Well,
to.
I think the wolves that you're referring to actually are all the ones that I've posted are from like
Okay,
a rehab facility. So I was lucky
still
to shoot
great.
them because they're just there. It's in the Adirondack Mountains, which is about 6 hours, from Buffalo. I have seen a wolf in the wild, but I was not able to photograph it. It was probably 300 or more yards away. It was actually on the way back in Jackson,
Okay.
or in when I was in the Tetons,
Hmm.
from that sunrise shot at Togwitty Pass. And of course, I just was like, my head was on a swivel. And I'm going to pat myself on the back. It may have been the greatest animal spot in the history of man. This thing was so far away and was like in between trees. And Arthur was driving at a good speed. And I mean, it was also down like 300 yards. It wasn't just across, it was down. And somehow I looked over and I saw it. And I go, stop the car, stop the car. And they stopped. They're like, what do you see? What do you see? And I'm like, there's a wolf over there. They're like, what are you talking? Like they couldn't even see it. Like I had to get them out of the car and point and zoom in with the camera. And they're like, how in the
How?
hell did you see that? They're like, that is impossible. I was like, I think it's just because I wanted to so badly that like my
How?
senses were peaked, but it was just so far I couldn't get a good shot. So it's probably the lamest, story as far as wildlife that I've just got them at the rehab. But it didn't make it any less special for me because that was the first time I'd seen a wolf in real life. It just
Hmm.
wasn't in the wild.
Mm.
Um, and the beauty of them is just incredible. There is definitely, like, you can see why, the Native Americans and everything held them in such high regard, and why there are so many legends and
Hmm.
stories about them, because they are majestic, you know,
Agreed. Agreed.
beautiful creatures. And especially, like you said, with the dog, I mean, dogs are derivatives of
Yep.
wolves.
Yep.
And actually, the Shiba Inu, which I told you about my dog, they are the closest genetic species to a wolf,
Wow.
surprisingly. Which
Wow.
was, I was like, that's awesome. I always tell my little dog, I'm like, you're a freaking wolf, man. Like, you're a wolf. And I think he knows it. He's 22 pounds, but he's just like regal as shit. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
just
I
like,
know
I
what
know
I'm
I'm
at.
the man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know
He's
what
got a
I'm at.
little,
Do you
yeah.
know my lineage? Do you not know
y-
my lineage?
Yeah. Do you know who I am?
Come here. Something I wanted to ask you as well. I think, and I think it was when you were in the Tetons. You were with a bunch of people. Is that a group of people called Shutter Six? Is that right,
Oh,
or is
so
that
that's not,
different?
no. So Shutter Team 6 is myself, Adam Danny, who's from Buffalo, like me,
Yeah.
Seth Macy, who is in Toronto, or not Toronto, he's in Fort Erie, Canada, but which is near Toronto,
Sure.
and Mike Nucharino, Nuch 10, who's Buffalo, and Aaron Manis, Mantis Photography, who's in Connecticut.
Wow. That's some
So
mix.
I knew Adam first, and did, Yosemite with him, and then Iceland and everything, and then right before, last year was the pandemic. So right before the pandemic was, uh right before, I had met Mike through Instagram, and I told Adam and Mike, I'm like, I want to start a Buffalo photography community, place for people to meet, pick their brains, get advice, shoot together, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, oh, it's a great idea. And so, like, Mike made some cool laminated tag. Like, I just started reaching out to photographers from Buffalo on
Hmm.
Instagram, and had one of my buddies who's like a beer connoisseur. We did a beer tasting event,
Hmm.
at a local brewery. And at
Nice.
that time, like, only 1,200 or 12 people,
That was a
12
nice
people
start.
showed up.
1,200. Yeah. Fair play.
Yeah. And we had a freaking blast.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and Seth on Instagram one day was like, man, this is lame, and we had never met, had never really talked. He's like, it's boring. Wanna FaceTime and, just get to know each other? I'm like, sure,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
So we FaceTime and had a blast. And then I had already started to have conversations with Aaron about photography, um, prior to that. And so we all just kind of connected, and started doing, Seth created then, we all did. He created, the Toronto Photo Rebellion, and Aaron created, um, or no, New England Photo Rebellion and Toronto. Oh God, I can't remember. Anyway, so then we had all these three regions,
Hmm.
and throughout COVID, we just started trying to create some business things out of it, and would do virtual meetups. We had Brooke Lowbear come on. We had, all these big photographers come on and do presentations for
Brilliant.
the people in the group, which has been great. And then we decided we wanted to, we started a couple times, got some free trips to, some nice Airbnbs and everything in exchange for photos, and got some
Hmm.
free products. And we're like, all right, well, why don't we kind of turn this into something? So Shutter Team 6 is just, a content creation, agency, if you will. And, where we kind of go in and revamp, businesses, Instagram, webpage, give them photos if they need it, products, all sorts of stuff like that.
Brilliant. And which one of the team was the guy who flew the drone through the house and around the
Oh,
house?
that's Tom Warner. He was the latest addition. We had gotten this
Good addition.
unbelievable Airbnb stay, and I had worked with Tom, who does FPV drones, the first
Hmm.
person view,
Hmm.
which are insanely difficult.
Hmm.
And he killed it, and everybody had such a good time with him. We're like, let's make him a member too. And
Yeah.
then that kind of came in. Yeah, that thing went crazy viral.
That was brilliant.
We had like we had a ton of stuff. Real estate companies reaching out. We had like 8 Airbnbs, 2 at the base of the Swiss Alps that were like, "Come out, you got a free place to stay." We're like,
Wow.
"Tom, we're gonna need you again." They don't even need us. Like they just need Tom.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. It was, fair play to Tom. That was fantastic flying. So yeah,
Yeah,
good addition to the team. Um,
yeah,
One final question I have for you there before we go for our last break, right? Is we've touched on a number of different things about photography, and I think, what do you think the photographer's role is in 2021 and beyond? I mean, even not only just from wildlife, but just in general. You've met up a number of people, you've got a lot of experiences, you've been to different areas, you've got this group, like I say, you saw up in Buffalo and such like that. But what do you think, from the photography point of view, is our role now and going
yeah.
forward?
I mean, so there's a couple things that I think every photographer should be mindful of, which is things we've talked about in some of the clubhouse rooms, which is if it's wildlife ethical, if it's landscape ethical,
Hmm.
tagging responsibly. Those are easy answers that um, you know we should all strive to build into how we share our photography.
Agreed. Yeah.
Um, but I also don't think it's fair to put any kind of undue pressure on somebody and expectation for their art. So I think the role of the photographer is, I'm going to take it back to what I had said earlier, which is to try and um, s- spread the joy of being aware of your surroundings. Like we should all continue to share photography because I think the more people that we can enlighten with the gift of, hey, don't just overlook that. you know
Hmm. Hmm.
like notice everything, notice the way the water is falling off a leaf, notice the way the light changes during a sunset,
Hmm.
go out and watch the sunset, don't just let another pass you by, get up for a sunrise. Like I think to that should be everyone's role. You don't have to change anybody's mind, but I think if that's part of the reason you're doing it, that's a great way to make a difference. You always hear people say, if I can just change one person's life, or if I can help somebody, feel a little happier or laugh, I've done my job. Like you hear that kind of answer all the time, and that's what our role should be as photographers, outside of the self-indulgent goals and the career goals and everything. I think just bringing it, because it's free.
Hmm.
That's something that is free.
Yeah.
Nobody has to pay to see a sunrise. So if you can impact somebody to be like, I think I want to go walk in the woods more, or I want to get
Hmm.
up for a sunrise, and now you've given somebody who may be dead broke, doesn't have money to travel, and you've given them a free guide on how to get some happiness and joy, even if a lot of other shit isn't going right.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're kind of like an ambassador for nature, as
hmm
you're mentioning it there, because you want to be able to share it, but you also want to open people's eyes to be able to see it, because it's under their nose, just they don't see it. And
yeah, and it doesn't, like you said. I mean, it doesn't have to be nature. Doesn't have to be wildlife.
Mhm,
If it's people, like noticing the interactions between the parent and a child, or two
mhm,
people on a walk in front of you, that are holding hands and kissing. Like there is beauty all around us to be found and
100%.
recognized. And I
Yeah.
think the more your mind notices and accepts that, the more joy you're going to find out of things. The more excited you'll get about small things. You won't need to have some big stimulation or huge event to bring joy into your life. You'll be less worried about material things, and I think being able to find those joys and things that make life nice, a lot easier.
100%. And you know what? Just to kind of to wrap up before we go to the next segment there on this is, I think photography is quite interesting for me, because it's the only thing really that would get you out of bed early in the freezing cold, in the rain potentially, to go stand somewhere for a long period of time and then be let down because the light isn't be there. But it was still a
Right.
great morning.
Yeah. Still a
You know
great
what I mean?
morning.
Yeah, so it's phenomenal from that. And like I say, yeah, you'll try and make a badge for you as an ambassador for nature because you did a good job there, I think, on that one there, Brett.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're going to take our final break. And listen, I've got three questions I ask every guest. And I'm going to ask you the same questions, and we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this episode of the Irish Photography Podcast, why not jump back and listen to the back catalogue we have of episodes, where you'll get some great insights from fantastic guests, gear reviews, lots of hints and tips, and above all else, keeping you company while you drive or relax. Thanks very much for listening. Please consider subscribing, leaving a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you're very welcome back to the final part of the Irish Photography Podcast. So, Brett, like I said, I've got three questions I ask every single guest. I'm not going to leave you off, right? So I'll bring you into the fray and we'll go and see what your answers are to these staple three questions of the Irish Photography Podcast. So the first one I ask is, everybody has them, and it's a funny photography story. So tell me, what's yours?
Man, I've got a lot. The one about me not being able to get an image in focus is definitely one, but I already
Yeah, that's
told
up
that.
there. Yeah.
I think, so when I went to Iceland, I went with Adam and Dave, two buddies, and we rented a camper van, a small one. And,
Okay.
we get to Iceland and the guy is kind of showing us our camper van, and we all looked at each other while he's explaining everything just because it is so small. You can't even stand up in it. And it's three grown men, and we kind of looked at each other and we're like,
With camera gear,
wow,
yeah.
shit just got real. And he's telling us about, like, here's your weather tracker and everything. Be careful, you could get abandoned, you could get blown off the road. So we're realizing this is not, a trip to the Bahamas. This is going to get
Hardcore.
sketchy a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
And so uh we were driving back from, where was it? Through, I can't even pronounce the national park there, but we had a long drive. We were trying to make it up to the West Fjords, and it was going to be about a 5 hour drive. And the wind was, no joke, 80 miles per hour sideways.
Nice.
And the road that we were on was, two lane. So one lane going one direction, one in the other. The snowdrift across this kind of flat, all the mountains were in the back on the side. So there was a snowdrift that was just insane. And cars were putting their flashers on and going about 5 miles per hour. I am so riddled with anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absolutely terrifying. Like, I thought I was going to throw up for, 2.5 hours. We finally get past that part. And I mean, there's a video of me where I have more expletives about how annoyed I am with Mother Nature right now. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Give me an effing break. Chill the F out. Like, just swearing at Mother Nature like she's a real, like she's a person I can communicate, like will actually take mercy. And I mean, it just sucked though, because the last 2 hours of our drive was dark, and there was
In
no
that
way we were going to
conditions.
make it. We got about a half hour up this road, and we saw a camper van twice our size, 25 feet off the road.
Oh,
And we were like,
Jesus.
and that's a wrap. So we just ended up getting absolutely hammered at a motel that we had passed a mile behind. We were like, thank God for this spot. But yeah, it was
Wow.
pretty bad. I can't. The funny part of the story is the video. I mean, my buddies were in tears at the words that I was coming up with, because I was so mad about the level of anxiety that I was being put through. That's scary though, because the
Oh,
snowdrift was so bad that you can't tell which way is up. I mean, I literally could not see. I couldn't tell if I was staying straight, left or
wow.
right, and
Wow.
it's just, that's terrifying.
Yeah, we know what every kind of scary thing always has to end up getting shit faced, and I think that was,
Yeah,
the right thing to do. So yeah, it was a good idea. Yeah, good
yeah.
story. Like, is
We
that
had we
video?
had we had real quick. We had the whiskey bottle that we hadn't opened up that whole time. We get back, and the other part of that story that's really funny is our buddy got so drunk he fell asleep on the bed standing up, and we look over. His computer was open because he had been editing photos. While he was drunk and passed out, we see his hand moving across the cursor. He was editing in his sleep. in his drunken sleep, and we were like, that is absolutely hysterical. So we took a video of him, and he's snoring, yet his hand is moving like he's editing. I'm like, this guy is dreaming that he's editing right now.
Are those videos online? Can I find those videos?
No, I'll have to get my buddy to send them, and then I'll share them.
Yeah, that would be funny. That would be funny. Okay, brilliant answer. Okay, we've alluded to a couple of times. We know you shoot Sony, so tell us, what gear do you use? Use a Sony A, and give me all your lenses. Give me all the gas that you've experienced over the last number of years, and you spent
Yep.
on Sony.
Right now I've got the Sony A7R III, nice little full frame. I've got a Sigma 16 millimeter f1.4. Got
Very
a
nice.
Tamron 28 to 75 f2.8. I've got a 7200 uh, G Master
Nice.
and a 150 to 600 Sigma and a Sony 50 millimeter prime.
That's a very, very nice collection. And I presume you don't bring the kitchen sink with you every time you go on a trip, do you?
That's my biggest issue, is that I am always so terrified that I'm gonna find something to shoot
And not
that
have the
I
lens?
don't have the right lens for, and I've got to learn to just like
Let
say
go.
screw it.
Yeah, yeah.
My if I could leave my like, there's plenty of times I should not have brought my big lenses or my wildlife, especially my 150-6. But I'm
Hmm.
like, but this is an 11-mile hike. Like, we'll be in there. What if I see something? I never use it, and it's an extra, whatever. So
You
I got to
just
get
brought
better
it.
about that.
Yeah, you've just brought in a Sigma 150 to 600 on an 11-mile hike, just
Right.
for the sake of bringing it, to make it harder for yourself to bring it in there. But I totally get it, because it is kind of case of fear of missing out. That's just in case it happens, you don't want to miss it, because damn, and then if you stop bringing it, you might find, you know what, ever since I stopped bringing that, I've missed this shot and I've missed that shot. And then all of a sudden you're back into bringing it just in case again. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. I get it.
Yep.
And what tripod do you use? What do you sit the camera on?
Oh my God, I can't even think of the name now. I'm brain farting on the tripod, but it's
It has three
uh,
legs anyway, so that's a good start.
yeah, it's three legs. It's the carbon fiber. It's nice. One of my actually most fun buys that I really love now is the L bracket. I can't believe
Yeah,
it took me so long to get one. I'm
yeah.
a moron for not having gotten it before. I actually like holding the body of the camera with it on. Like, I like that it adds a little
Hmm.
more girth, gives me more
Hmm.
to stand
Hmm.
on. But
Yeah.
especially for the tripod part, I mean, especially with big lenses, there are times where I want to use a big lens and a slower shutter. And
Hmm.
even, I mean, it's gonna eventually just start lowering and lowering. It can't
Yeah.
hold that weight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's been one of my most fun buys. I'm like, I can't believe I went as long as I did without it.
And tell me, is that your VSP? Is your L bracket a VSP by any chance? Your very solid product.
Um, yeah, I think so. I think there's just a lot
Mhm.
of, and just from getting damaged, even like you don't know, even if you don't have a tripod, but you want to set it on something sturdy, but it's dirty and everything like that. Like, having
Yeah.
that L bracket on the bottom is great.
It's like a cage that surrounds it and protects it.
It's
I mean,
great. Yeah.
and what I love about it is that, you get your composition set up, and all of a sudden you go, okay, I want to change from landscape to portrait.
Hmm.
Bang, you're done.
Boom. 2 seconds.
2 seconds. And I remember before I had my L bracket, you get your whatever lens ball head, and you tilt your camera down. But you'd have the camera so finely balanced on a rock, like you say, which is so slippy, that you just put the camera off, and it's that little bit extra, and now the camera is now leaning to the left hand side, which
Yep.
means it could go off because the weight in the central is gone. And plus, you want to do panos, bang, done, as opposed to now you're
Hmm.
getting this and you have to find this nodal point and everything else. It was much, much easier when you get your L bracket. So yeah, that was I predicted your answer for your VSP. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
it's
it's
a
a good one.
very, very good product. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. Brett, we're nearly there, man. We're almost to the end of this fantastic conversation. I've loved it. What's next for you? What's your next trip? And what's next on the cards for you?
Um, so I turned 40 in at the end of July,
Yeah.
and
Tick tock, tick
I'm
tock,
hoping
tick
to
tock.
take a big trip. What's that?
Brilliant. Tick tock, tick tock, tick
Yeah,
tock.
I
Yeah.
know.
The time is ticking towards it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been looking at Olympic National Park. There
Nice.
are they've got like those forests that are, I mean, that I see a lot of those guys. in Dorchester in the UK and everything, like those really crazy haunted wooded
Yeah.
rainforesty scenes, to mountains, like just a ton of landscape, beaches with sea stacks, like a lot of really interesting things. So I think I'm gonna head out there,
Nice.
but I'm just not positive yet. It's getting down to the wire. So that'll be my next, I think, big trip. In between then and now, though, I'm just gonna try and go out and practice as much. Try and get more of that action wildlife, like we
Hmm.
talked about, and
Hmm.
birds are abundant around here. So that'll be probably what I'm shooting a lot of. I actually am going to shoot some fox tomorrow morning,
Fantastic.
but we'll see how that turns out.
Brilliant. And you mentioned there, like, you go to Olympic National Park because you've got you know, lovely old forests, you've got sea, you've got sea stacks. We've all that here as well in Ireland. Have you ever been to
Mm-hmm.
Ireland, or have you ever any plans to come to Ireland?
100%. Yeah. Like I said, I hope to within the year. Um, Maybe not the calendar year, but
Mm.
within 12 months, I'd like to
Yeah,
try and get there. Just because I've already got a couple trips, weddings planned that kind of take me through January, where I just couldn't fit anything in, before that. So
sure.
I'm hoping before it gets too long, but I will get out there. It's definitely a place I've been dying to go. And actually, my buddy who is a beer connoisseur, we've been talking about doing a photography and beer or
Good
alcohol like
combination.
workshop, combining
Good
the two.
combination. Yeah,
And so he's actually done that type of thing out in Ireland and stuff like that. He's like, man, we should do a couple here locally where we combine two and people are paying for both experiences.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if they go well, we work those kinks out, do one in Ireland. So that might
Well,
be in the future.
well, look, you know what? We have the landscape and we also have the beer. So
You
yeah,
do.
it's a good combination. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be more than welcome when you visit Ireland. Hook me up. I'll look after you. So yeah,
100%.
we'll have a good one.
Yeah, I
And I
can't
suppose,
wait.
yeah. And finally, and one thing actually will say to you is don't come in the summer because the sea will be too calm. So
Okay.
you want to come in February or March, maybe a bit of April, but or September and October are good as well. So just put that in your
Good to know.
calendar. Yeah. So Brett, I've really really loved having the conversation with you. Where can people find more information about you?
Just my Instagram is easy. It's at Bret Blakely, BretBlakely. I do sell prints, brettblakely.darkroom.tech, which I try and keep as up to date as possible. I got to add a few, I think my last two or three, but for the most part, the last like 3 months of stuff is up there.
Brilliant.
And yeah, that's where you can find me. Reach out, DM, if you got a question or just want to say hello. I'm usually pretty responsive. So
Brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. What I'll do is I'll put some links and stuff in the show notes as well, so people can, click direct and find your work. But Brett, it's been a fantastic conversation. It's great to finally see your face. 'Cause I know we've spoken a lot just from
yeah,
the clubhouse world, but it's great to see your face as well and have this conversation. I've
it,
loved hearing your story.
yeah, man, it was an honor. I really, really thankful you had me on, and it was awesome chatting with you. I've always enjoyed talking with you on Clubhouse, so this was even better having a face to it. And I'm sure that one day soon we'll be meeting in person. So thanks again for
Oh,
everything.
we will do. We will do. Okay, from me in Ireland to you in Buffalo. Oh, by the way, before I go, I actually have Spoonleys that live in Buffalo. Would you believe?
You have what?
The Spoonleys that live in Buffalo. I always never knew that. I always
Really?
thought, yeah, I always thought the Spoonley was a unique name and there was nobody ever anywhere else. But when the internet came along and we found Spoonleys that live in Buffalo, and there was a thing years ago called Spoonley Train,
Okay.
the train man Spoonley or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I just wanted to say that. I don't know why I want to say it to you before I finish, but
That's
yeah,
amazing.
that's actually Spoonleys in Buffalo, and I never even knew that they existed. So yeah.
2 degrees of separation.
I know, yeah. So look, yeah, I'll try the outro again. Listen, look, thanks a million for coming on. From me and Aaron to you in Buffalo, Slán the Fóill.
Yeah, definitely. Loved it.
Hey guys, if you dig what you're hearing, why don't you jump over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and don't forget to share with your friends. With all that done, we'll see you next week, and remember, keep shooting.